Karaoke later. That's gonna be great.
And this whole session's being recorded, correct?
Yep.
If we want to get likes on the Facebook page, this is how.
Yeah. Can you do like a Facebook Live video when we karaoke?
With the counselors, could do it like we could get voted off.
She's taking our songs and we're all ready to drop the mic. So if there's a karaoke session today,
Negatory.
live that.
I'm gonna collect your stuff.
Is this you?
Oh, come on. Yeah, come on now. Where's participating on it?
A song that invigorates you.
Not optional. Hurry up.
Write down a song that invigorates you.
I don't think that's gonna.
Tiger, there you go.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't write it, but I just said it to.
I didn't rush your like. That is not my song. That's why I was like, all right, this better be something good, and I can't. Something.
I think you can
On
handle
the gavel, it's up here.
Call the meeting to order.
I'm just kidding.
it. Might need it.
Call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone. Good morning. Hopefully you've all had at least one cup of coffee. Last one here is buying everything today. Thank you, Joel.
Well, thank you for sharing, everyone. Start with we did our interview. I'm gonna just, before we get into our intentions and stuff, I just want to give you an overview of the goal process. I'm gonna share my.
I do have a quick question. We need to set any ground rules, or will the team agreement kind of solidify what we would expect in this setting? Just to confirm, today's meeting is being recorded and will be public, so things do come up, specifically maybe from executive session discussions that we've had over the last year, that we would be mindful that we don't bring up those topics in this setting. I just want to clarify that.
So. There's several. clarifications.
Yeah.
Let me start with the first one, the ground rules. Actually have the rules for success. Yes, I have your. We can those in a minute. Because we can use those, but I want to just check in and see, there might be a few things that we need to add. I'll plan for that in a second. Mention. I don't know. I don't believe it. Topics on our list that would come up or related to executive session, but
I don't think so, but it's always possible. It's never
Just
hurts
rather
to
it be
make that
said.
disclaimer. Yes.
And accidentally spoken.
Yes, this is a public meeting because you all are gathered here together.
and the city attorney. And then did I? What was the third one?
I think it was in conjunction with it, since it's being
Yeah.
recorded.
All right. Thank you for those clarifications. Just to, I want to orient us to the process that we're going to go through here today. Everybody's guide people. So first, we're going to start with intention setting. You can be thinking about this as part. But we do lots of one meeting to the next, activity to activity. We're all. So I think it's important to pause, let for a moment, into this conversation. Think about what your intention for today. Second piece is just has a vision right here. A lot of content here, but to summarize it, you've got some areas of smart growth. I just think it's important to mention everything we do today should say. The next piece is looking back and reflecting. So we're going to do this as we want to think about where we've been before we think about where we're going. That'll be part of the context through and think about accomplishments, challenges, and then looking around at your environment. So again, this will be what's happening around us. Next piece, we'll get into the goal refinement process, and part of that will be at what maybe comes off the list, what stays on, what gets updated, what's relevant, maybe no relevant. We'll generate some ideas around that. Or are there new things that need to be added? So then, as we get into the refinement process, we'll start to zero in on what. Sometimes groups will generate goals where it feels like a just giant task. So part of that, you want to have some objectives and to direct the organization. We also want to think about what are the overarching outcomes. And I've seen the goals that you guys have done in years past. Done a pretty good job of that. We'll try to zoom out and think about what's the outcome that we're trying to achieve. That'll be part of that refinement. And then lastly, it's about making a plan. That's the overview of the process. Put this up here. Talk about this. On those. Rules for success. So, let's go around and share our intentions. I have your, what we'll do. I'm going to I will put these, I started a Spotify playlist. And during our breaks, I'll use it, we'll play it.
Fantastic. That is great.
Anything that feels appropriate. I have to do some adjusting on the.
We don't record during breaks, right? Good.
Okay, so let me get some markers here. So.
I defer, I don't.
I'll go first, as a rule.
Always.
I have,
I run the meeting. Can we adjourn it right now? I'm just kidding.
I'm a volunteer.
Sure.
She's just the dude.
Yeah, please use my first name. Yeah. I come here with the intention to work collectively and collaboratively together with my fellow elected officials and city staff to review our goals, but also to be open to new ideas that maybe are not in my current alignment, my current lens. So I want to be open. I want to have open dialogue. I want to be respectful. But I also want healthy debate in the room. And so with that, I come with open ears and eyes, but also to bring the voice of the community members into this conversation so that our goal setting is based on the collective and not our own individual preferences. Thank you.
So my intention, I'm going to be summarized here, is just to summary at the end, do the best thing for the city of Scappoose, the community, and to get there, just want to have an open mind, listen to everybody's, the other councilor and the mayor's staffs to different ideas on how to get there, and just again at the end of the day, just make sure that our intentions and our actions reflect what we want the community of Scappoose.
For me, it's finding that collaborative approach for really finding a way for smart growth in Scappoose. You know, finding what's the best for the community in a whole, in our long-term growth.
Like community and citizen centered goals, mindset. I come to the table today to be empathetic to our citizens and our community, but also to the counselors in the room and their ideas, which leads me to being open-minded and collaborative.
It's like I'm.
Out of the box. The creative. I'll go home, do that process.
My intentions today is to leave this room invigorated going forward.
Now, if you started first, and then
Oh, yeah, I know. That one. Wait. Okay. My intention is to, really, for me, it's, continue to position the city of Scappoose, move forward successfully to have a growing local economy, be ready for the issues that face us. We never know what they're going to be, but listening to what everyone has to say, and even your mind has to be changed based on the information we gather. So my intention is to continue moving. I always love to go back to my very first time when I ran for city council. I had these little postcards. I had three basic things: a park system, wanted family wage jobs, a well-trained police department. In all three areas, we have head and shoulders above where we were in 1998. So my intent is to put us head and shoulders above where we are today.
Getting out of this. See. Well, I think that really like to see collaboration coming out of this between council and staff, but also having really seeing that amongst council is really helpful to staff because we know that we're going to get your unified direction, and then clarity on the direction we're going so that we know how to implement that vision.
Well, I've been to several of these, and I think that to me, this is just a great opportunity to collaborate with council. When normal council meetings don't have enough time to have the dialogue. I guess hearing the vision and kind of better understanding buyers are to kind of find that.
We would do what we do in the classroom. I have a connection to that.
Well, the role of the city attorney is to call balls and strikes, so what I try to do. But I would say I think that Scappoose is really a city that's kind of on the cusp and could go in a lot of different directions. Some of them exciting and some of them kind of scary. And I would hope that people are really honest with each other and are willing to have some of the tough conversations.
Can I add something just kind of minor to mine? Being proactive instead of reactive.
Well, I think it's about why we're here and what we're doing. All right, you guys ready to?
It's gonna be really hard if we don't even know this.
Yeah.
You don't know that song? I'll play it for you. It's on my phone, but it's not mine.
I guess I might be hurt now.
No, it's not.
It's not yours, Alex?
Nope.
No.
I'll
I know
probably
it.
know when I hear it, but it's just.
You probably will when you hear it.
Oh my
Well, I think I was gonna play it for you, but I think I got.
I can grab it off. I mean, but it'd be off my phone.
That's one goal of the day has been
Does
resolved.
anybody, do most people know this song? Is in the heart. But it was in the movie.
I can play it on my phone. It's just not gonna be very.
Sister Act, good movie.
Good.
Yeah, Whoopi Goldberg, 1999.
Let's see.
I'm looking around the room like,
Or do you want me to play this?
I'm just gonna play it. I'm gonna.
Okay.
Isaac, did you contribute to the list? Did not. Okay.
gotta be the mayor, Josh. Or Peter.
For Peter, yeah.
No,
What about
man.
you?
No. I had not thought about that song since like 1992.
Yeah, right. No, and that's not. Come on. Now.
All right, Alex, you can play it. 'Cause I'm not- it's not-
Oh, okay. Alright, I'm finding it.
Let's keep it under 30 seconds for fair use
Oh
purposes.
God.
We only have a licensing agreement with one of the,
For educational purposes.
sorry.
I can only play it so loud. I don't know.
I mean, Brandon's rock.
I think that's
On my playlist too, Alex.
Brandon.
Fine.
My vote's Brandon.
Oh, yeah.
Got into it a little.
Can't stop when you hear it, you know? Yeah, right, yeah. I see the handwriting. I'm gonna go with Megan too.
That made me think of you too, Megan. I don't know why.
Really, I think it's Joel.
All right. The opera singer? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, that's an aria.
Okay.
What edition is it? 'Cause I will put it in the playlist. Okay.
Even know that song.
Josh.
Nice.
Way to go, Brandon.
great song.
Oh.
Megan.
Oh, baby shark.
You got little kids? Who's got little kids?
Somebody guess Megan.
I think it's Tyler.
Tyler, because he's trying to be funny.
Trying, everybody's laughing. Damn.
Now we get to listen to that, a break?
Yeah.
Oh, no, no,
I do
no.
want to request, do not play that
Don't
song.
laugh. Don't play that. No.
Yeah, anybody who has kids.
I did. I'm not allowed yesterday, and I did.
There's no baby shark.
The people with kids. Okay, hail to the king.
Oh, the mayor.
Mayor.
That wasn't hard.
Didn't know it was a guessing game. A little bit of speed metal.
Okay, this one, gotta give it up. Marvin Gaye.
Good choice.
Alex.
Your guess, Alex, any other guess?
I think it's Peter. Usually the person that tries to get
Ah.
is the person.
No, that's my soul. That's the soul sister right there.
Maybe
That's Alex.
That's okay.
Yay.
All right.
Oh, I love you.
Welcome to the jungle.
Oh.
Dave, did you do it? You did not?
Participate.
Oh.
Not you.
I totally was drawing a blank.
That's
He's
Peter.
the GNR fan.
Not you.
Peter.
My run was to Appetite to
Yes.
Destruction.
Yeah,
I
great
could
album.
tell how fast I was going based on the song list. Oh yeah, and almost every song on that album was like a song to run to.
There's not many options left.
Yeah, here we go. Who's next? Me and Pete?
Night Train.
Oh,
Good job.
That's Pete.
Megan?
And y'all
Yeah.
don't know me.
Can
very
you tell
well.
us
Wait,
what
have
the
you
next one
got
is?
one yet?
No, I thought it was Ave Maria, Baby Shark.
I don't know about Baby
Can you
Shark.
tell us what the next one is?
Apparently.
Susan, did you participate?
Not good.
Huh? Who's left?
Left.
Megan and
Pete.
Pete?
Pete.
Was it? Ready?
Megan.
Yeah.
Megan.
You got mad at me for saying that.
The giveaway was, what was it?
We just lost Tom Petty last year.
Yeah, get it, Pete.
I don't know.
Completely drew a blank, but I had to come up with a song. All I could think of.
All right.
Is that
so
Johnny
we'll-
Cash?
during the break,
Yeah,
we'll
that's a
get
good
those-
one.
And I
So
should've
how did
picked up
how did we do comparatively?
Well, I feel like I'm pretty, I think I would listen. Good ones. They had some good ones too, but I think I might.
I mean, it was either that or surfing in a hurricane.
I mean, as far as guessing,
There's like this-
guessing what the other.
Some people we got right away.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. If
Well, I did that on purpose.
Is and yes, so I, that means I, and I was trying to think. I had them do this. But it's pretty good. I didn't know what to expect.
I feel like now everyone should write down the first song that came to mind. We then self-censored.
Censored. Sure.
I don't think that was a good idea.
All right.
It was a seashell.
Well, that was. Let's talk about our rules. If you want to get into, I mean, we can play more during the breaks. But always fun.
I have so many other ideas.
So the rules for success. You guys have on your. Says I'm online.
He had kicked you off. I don't know.
Or maybe
There you
I
go.
need to sign back. in.
Yeah, you might have to sign back in.
It's, so on here, the rules, for us, team agreements, you guys have not making, well, prepare and do homework by reading stuff, that's not really big. If you don't make assumptions. Is there another Wi-Fi network?
You have the option check to automatically connect. That might help.
Goal. Technology goal.
All right, new goal.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's let me. There we go. I just don't need that. Oops. Okay. There are. There's one to take. They're out. Have these worked well in your meetings since last year or anything else that you need back here for today?
what the mayor wants.
Man, you're on a high horse today.
Recognize your opinion may not always be shared. We disagree. All the rules of order and procedure. Access. Honest team after the made. Megan?
So if I totally agree to all of those today. Is there time today to talk about those if they're not being followed outside of today's setting? Great, thank you.
The other ones, like, are really. Right, so the next part of it is, about the. I'm doing exercise last year, and I'm gonna just facilitate this part from. Do you guys ever use Mural? Mine whiteboarding system. This has been my world over the last couple years, and so anyway, it's just a virtual whiteboard system. And have this. Do you guys remember this graphic last time? And so, just a quick reminder: council manager form of government. It's rating, and for it to really perform at its highest level, recognize the different roles. So again, council says what, staff determines the council that is representing the constituents to keep staff informed. Staff with all of their and they bring all that technical to help the council in making council one of your primary responsibilities. And then staff's responsibility is to take that direction and align those. The other most every year is approving. Typically in line with those. And then staff takes that budget. So with that comes some expectations, and that's what we talked about last year. Getting into, you guys had several categories here, some agreements for meetings and business. We had around member conduct and commitments to the community, and commitments between staff and foster. Was the one we were about being one team, have to communicating through the city manager, questions and relationship, community, ensure unity of our staff. Pros and cons for scenarios, summary and background and professional relations. So that was from a little over a year ago, January 2021. Yeah, let's hear now kind of how it's been working. Where has it been helpful? Where has let's answer those questions around and where it could use it. And also be thinking about how do you guys talk about them, put them together, then where it gets
So I feel like for last year, we had a very challenging year. We had a very contentious issue with, and it continues to kind of be that way. But I feel like we're moving out of that area with Grabhorn Park and also some just things that happened within our police department too. So I feel like 2021 was kind of, I'm talking here, I'm realizing I really don't have any context because 2021 was really my first year as a city councilor. So perhaps some others can chime in and add to what I'm saying. But I think everybody, from what my observations are, that everybody tried to observe these the best they could. But there's some pretty strong opinions by way of the two topics that I just brought up, which was Grabhorn Park and the police department. So those are, I'm literally thinking out loud here, so I apologize, but that's kind of relating what's up on the board versus what happened in 2021. I feel like those were our two challenging pieces that perhaps had some deviation away from what our goals were, our ground rules.
What was the park that you mentioned?
And everybody on this council and staff, my observations are that everybody has the best intentions, and it was just kind of a, I don't even know how to put it. I think everybody in the room who's been present at the council meetings, knows what I'm talking about, and hopefully some of y'all can add to that.
Yeah, I think we need to celebrate constructive criticism. And so we have to differentiate, trying to undermine things with constructive criticism is useful and helpful. And so if a counselor, whether it's one or two or whatever, they see something that doesn't look right, I think they have a duty to bring that forward. Now that may offend someone that has a different view, but I think having constructive criticism is really essential for good governance.
Just to piggyback off of Joel's comment, I completely agree that constructive criticism is useful. But when words like, you've got to be an idiot to think or say, and you speak that way to other counselors or city staff in public meetings, that totally deviates between constructive. And I think I've got several things circled here about, disagreeing without being disagreeable, but respecting other people's differences. And I love that when we started, this part of the agenda, you had mentioned, we have skilled staff members in their realms with degrees, and it was just really upsetting to see, on this last one, avoid saying or doing anything that would discredit or harm the city. And I feel like some comments, you may quote have the best of intentions, but certainly not coming across that way. In some of these debates, they were definitely not healthy, and they were harmful to the city, and it created a block between the council and the staff and amongst ourselves.
I think having these defined and agreed upon by the council and staff is very valuable. So I think just outlining it and having this as a resource for us to point back to is something that gives us structure in our decision making and our interactions amongst each other and how we deliver outcomes for the community. I think the opportunity to improve with this is I think each of us prioritize these differently. So even though they're bullet points, I may be very passionate about one of those particular things, but maybe I don't feel as dedicated to another. So therefore, I think we bring in our own individual thoughts and how we use this as a resource. Lastly, I think delta here is that some of the language is subjective. So harm. Actually, I'm going to take a step back. I totally agree with you, Joel, that having constructive criticism is a valuable asset for open dialogue and decision making, and I support you 110% when you say that. I do agree that sometimes I use the wrong words, right? I'm not perfect, and maybe in the passion of the moment, I may say something that's what could be taken as being harmful to the discussion. But that's an opportunity for me to reflect on that and know what I'm bringing to the table. I hope that we can all humble ourselves and try to bring the best of ourselves when we have these conversations, because it does reflect on our community, of our community. So again, I believe that these healthy debates are a great way for us to refine our decisions and smooth out those sticking points. But at the end of the day, I know sometimes my decision might not be the winning decision. And I can accept that. But I also want to have open conversations, open dialogue, and at least putting out my opinions and the opinions that I'm representing into this body, into this conversation. I know I got really long-winded there, Sarah, so my apologies, but I hope.
Capture a summary.
Yeah.
If you don't like how I captured it, we could.
And I do this, Megan, because I think we're all on the same page, and I know where all of us are coming from, because Tyler, you said it right. It's been a rough year, right? But I think we also persevered, and we're probably not as bad off as we could have been, and I think that's a positive that we should build on, even though we did have a lot of differences leading up to this moment that we're all here together today. So with that, I appreciate everyone being here so we can actually work through this rather than ignoring it. And hopefully we come out the other side more prepared.
The foundation work. Right.
I think these guidelines give us a mindset that we use going into solving problems. That being said, I think it's a difficult line to walk sometimes, and obviously choosing your words carefully is very, very important. And I think understanding that each counselor is doing the best job they can, express themselves well. Sometimes myself, after I'm done saying something, I think to myself, it really express my point of view very clearly. I don't know if others get those feelings once in a while too, but and I just think it's really critical that we, it's okay to disagree, but really, really is. But we need to choose those words carefully when we do. At the end of the day, I think it's important that we all support each other, even though we disagree. I think that's the key factor there, is that we show support for each other.
Right. Who have we not heard from?
Me.
Yes.
Or Josh, go ahead, Josh.
For me, really, it comes back to, I think we look back at the last year, we've had a lot more dialogue to and for and against a lot of things. But that's a good thing. We want to have that dialogue. We want to have that. We're going to have more and more contentious things coming up. But being able to really kind of, after we come together to a decision, to be able to really collaborate and move forward with whatever that majority decision is, that's the number one for me. So whether I agree or don't agree with whatever the conclusion is, I should be able to support that group decision going forward.
I got some bad news for y'all. Last year was a walk in the park. And you have to remember, from my perspective, I went through this before, the police chief thing and controversy, and for everyone that said it could be much worse, you are correct. It could have been much worse, because what we went through 8 years ago, when I spent 8 weeks as the interim city manager, and communications were broken down. The council was literally making decisions outside of council, coming into council, and doing things, and I was in the minority for the entire year until things happened and the council flipped. New members came on, some left, but again, even through that time, my goal was to lessen bad legislation that they were trying to push forward by making amendments, considering those the victories, and really focusing on the agenda, working with the interims. But it can get worse, to the point where there was a point where at the end of the council meeting, I got broadsided by 5 members of the council who deeply, deeply criticized me because of really their decisions and actions. But so it can get worse. And so it's tough. And so, even through all this, when we disagree, we can disagree passionately. I don't have a ill bone for any of you, because you guys are different than that group. You all want what's best for the community. We may have different ideas, but you all to this day, continue to want to do what's best for this community. And that's where we go. I try to focus on staying on our goals, because I see what happens in other cities when we start going down rabbit holes and seeing how far that rabbit hole will go. So it was actually me and a member before all this happened, 2011, 2010, me and a council member were sitting before a meeting going, gosh, I wish we had the St. Helens waterfront. We'd already be doing something with that. And that was 10 years ago. So we're always a more active action council. That's how you stay on goals. If you start going down rabbit holes, you lose focus on what we've agreed to try to accomplish in that year. I think that's very, very important. But yeah, this last year, while it was tough because we had COVID and the Abhorn Park thing and then the police thing and hiring a new city manager, it was a walk in the park compared to 2012, 2013, leading up to Mike Sykes being. So I appreciate everyone's opinion. I think that we need to refocus on certain little things, make sure, like I mentioned at the last council meeting, about there was a complaint about our council president. But when I reviewed it, she actually said, I'm here as a community member and citizen. Whenever you're speaking and you're not officially representing the city, you need to make sure that's clear, because community members will see you sitting up there as your title and not as a community member. So that's so important. I think that's, well, she did it perfectly. And that she said, I'm here as a community member, parent. And she did also say, I'm an elected official, but everyone knew that already. So I appreciate all you. I mean, it's just, all right, emotions get up when I think about that time. I mean, the best part was actually being in Alex's shoes for 8 weeks. Let's say I do have probably a better understanding of her shoes than almost any mayor in the state, because I've been there. Pete, having administered to schools, probably understands her shoes a little better too. And I recognize that each person's talents and where we come from, and I think that's important. Is each person's background is a specialty that I don't have, so I have to lean on each one of you for that expertise and thought. You know, comes to radios, I trust Tyler. Comes to hiking and parks, you know, Joel's the go-to guy.
Have some
Sarah, I'd like to just piggyback a little bit on what Scott just said. You know, I think we need to put in bold letters, you know, that everyone on council here is a volunteer. We're not paid. You know, we're doing this, we're volunteering our time, and we're doing this because we love our community. We're doing everything that we do because we think it's in the best interest of the community. And so if we can just recognize that every time we get into a discussion or something where we have a contentious issue, we are genuinely trying to do what's best for our community, and just keep that in mind, and don't go, you know, like as Scott mentioned, don't go down a rabbit hole somewhere. So keeping that in mind with bold letters, you know, we are doing what we think is in the best interest of our community.
other theme that I'm hearing in the doing that and doing your job.
Yeah, what I'm hearing too, and what I've observed is that, and in line with everything we talk about, is we want every individual counselor to, you know, have their opinion and be able to voice it. I think where we run into the issue is something that is manageable, and that is that it really comes down to word choice and being respectful. There's a way to convey your disagreement amongst council, in the public, anywhere, in a way that is constructive and not negatively impacting on the city staff and other council members. So I think, to me, it's kind of like, as we talk through this, the takeaway is that we certainly can disagree with other counselors' opinions, but where we need to hit the pause button or the slow down button is how we go about disagreeing and how we voice that opinion. That's really the niche piece of, I think, where this council probably could improve.
I'd like to build on that a little bit, Tyler, in the sense of, I also think that each of us should come to the table with a little bit of a thick skin. We get into this role knowing that we're going to have to take on challenging things and that challenging conversations are to be had. So our own personal sensitivities, I think we need to check at the door sometimes and remember that when we are having those conversations, that in those heated moments, that those words aren't necessarily directed always at an individual, and that we don't have to overly take it. But I agree 110% that there's a professionalism approach that we need to keep in mind as well. And so I guess my point is we also have to understand what we have signed up for as part of that as well. So just a little bit back and forth on it to say that the pendulum swings both ways.
I would say that those two things together is what's going to get us to where we need.
Absolutely.
Is everybody in agreement kind of with this summary of like recognizing this? We have words on this, but balancing, you know, have a job to do and you're balancing a word choice, also knowing that with last question that you all haven't really asked in your right way to hold.
It's a tough one.
That's the, you know, that's the trickiest thing, because I mean, you're caught between taking too hard of a line just creates more, more division. Oh, like 'cause each member here is elected, so taking like your toe went across this rule. I've been on a council where we censured a member of the council and voted for it, and I regret it to this day just because it was a matter of free speech. People didn't like his speech, but it was free speech. And he was way more out of bounds of any of these rules than anyone else ever been. But I think that we can't, just because we hear something happened, and we have to act like a judicious body unless we have clear evidence that something happened. We would more likely just remind the council of the rules than it is to try to point someone out and you know push them away. It's better to bring them back into the loop by general reminder. So you get someone complaining about something, council, you can review it, but and the best thing you can do is look, they followed the rules or they didn't. But at the end of the day, they are still an elected person. We don't have the right. We can't expel them from the body. So if you too harsh on one individual, I do believe that you alienate them. It creates an emotional break from the even worse than breaking the team agreement is you're breaking up the team. So it's to me it's really tricky. It's difficult.
Let me try rephrasing the question. I don't know that, I know you guys have some rules, council rules. I think things like on the fly, being in suburbs, I'm like almost calling attention back to, let's remind ourselves about the, like there was a group who really struggled with asking for public involvement more than every time. And so the group became actually
Sure.
when things relevant.
So just to address the question head on, I am a huge advocate of freedom of speech, and I agree with Scott that we're each elected, and so there is a level of um, I, I don't know what to call it, but when just kind of in context of the issues that we've had, I feel like if one counselor doesn't is having an issue or having some heartache with something that another counselor is doing, that they actually talk one on one and try to engage in constructive dialogue to settle that. I think that a formal action by the mayor or this council should be reserved for a very last resort, like something is so off the rails that that constructive dialogue one on one between counselors one on one cannot address. But I really feel like, and this really goes for you know anything really, like in the workplace or whatever, right? You should always try to address your differences in a respectful, mutual manner with whoever it is that you know are disagreeing with. That's really should be your first stop on everything. That is just the respectful and professional thing to do. So I really think that if and it could be a situation where there's one counselor, two counselors, whatever, multiple counselors can go one on one and try to resolve the differences so long as it's not breaking the public meeting law. But I don't think that it would in that case where you're just trying to hopefully settle a dispute and you don't talk about the specific issue. Maybe I don't know, but I don't want to go into the weeds on that. But the summary is that I really think that there should always be that escalation where you always start at the base and try to resolve your issues one on one with the counselor whom you're having a disagreement with. And I think that because of the freedom of speech aspects, and because we are all each elected, by the citizens of Scappoose, that there needs to be some respect for that too. And so I see that sort of escalation fostering, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but just kind of fostering that model the best.
I'm gonna sit with my comment for a little bit if you want to move on.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think this is actually a real good opportunity for us to, because I find this being kind of a conflict at times. I think that we don't have a defined sergeant of arms. We lean on Alex to make sure that if things are maybe going off the rails, that you mediate and engage with people, right? I don't think that's defined in your role, right? Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why I say, I know that.
I think there's been instances where that's essentially happened, and it's been incredibly uncomfortable because you're talking about essentially me pointing out rules or the issue to one of my bosses,
Yes.
and I don't want to be in that position. And I feel like unfortunately that's really what's been sort of happening, is that it's been being pointed out in those avenues. And while of course I'm willing to, to make those boundaries and say, look, here's my concern with X, Y, Z. And I'll point out, I'll point out to the team agreement. I'll point, I'll say, hey, look, I'm following these things I'm supposed to follow. It's still very uncomfortable.
And I don't want you to be in that position. And I don't see your role as that position, right? And so that's why I bring it to our attention, is that in keeping the order of Robert's rules, Mr. Mayor, in your role, that would be, my understanding. And I think it's just good to clarify that so that we know. And if I, as a council member, have a concern, you should be who I engage so that it can be delegated to the proper, avenues or pathways or conversations to be had, so that we're all aware of that. And then if in your, Mr. Mayor, you've served our community great over the years, but if at a time moving forward, I think that when a new mayor is in place, that they would also be aware that this is their role and responsibility to help engage this accountability of our
My
agreed.
point is, I don't think it should be a heavy-handed approach.
And that's,
Mediation
Yeah.
and I agree with you 100%. You have that authority, right? You've been given that authority to address these things, right, when they occur, and you bring in your own personal beliefs on how those things should be addressed. And I'm not saying I don't support you or I do support you. I'm just saying I think we all need to be aware that that action should be on the mayor's position, be able to help delegate and better navigate those situations. And I'm not saying, I don't want to see any of us get censured, because that's when you're in a bad spot, right? I want to keep us on agenda, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd also like to just throw in kind of a generic concept. All of us in this room, and in fact, you could argue everybody on our planet that's a humanoid, is subjective. They have subjectivity. We all view the world differently. So subjectivity, whether it's on a rule or anything, a law, and certainly our lawyer, Peter, knows this in the courtroom. The subjective nature of human behavior, you have to take that into account. And you may think you're right, but you're not necessarily being objective. And so if all of us will step back and take that perspective, I think we can move forward, and that includes staff as well. You're not necessarily right. You have a subjective perspective on things. So if we keep that context in mind as we have issues that we're talking about or contending with, I think that helps going forward.
You want to kind of,
I'm ready.
are you ready?
Brina made a great point about thick skin, and And the mayor made a great point that, quote, there's been worse times than now. But I think the focus needs to be on here and now and how we can always improve ourselves and celebrate the things that we're doing well. Not, comparing where we've been or where we might go. And I totally agree with Brandon that we need to defer to the mayor to have conversations with other counselors, and that if we share with the mayor that we are struggling with another counselor's actions, that we trust that the mayor will engage with that counselor and remind them of the agreement. Multiple times, Counselor Haugen has mentioned, subjectivity and everybody kind of feeling like, they interpret these in different ways or feel that they're doing something. But I think what hits me is, Alex's comment of having to engage herself and put herself in these situations. Like, I can only do so much as a city manager. If it's on the goal list, I follow it. You guys agreed to it, I move on. Goal isn't on the list, not agreed upon by the council, I can't do anything, right? And I think that in some situations, these, whether it's been publicly in a meeting or privately with the mayor or with Alex, that these goals have been reminded and these goals have been revisited, but sometimes the behavior continues. And at what point, does subjectivity have something to do with it when so many people have had to step in the behavior? So I don't know if again, I'm not like in favor of censorship or anything like that. I'm just wondering, like, where do we go? We kumbaya it out, and because it's not her job. I mean, if it's his job, is he doing it? And or we come back as a council and say, I'm still not satisfied, or I don't know where to go.
I've seen this before. And this is with that, and there have to that's the protocol.
I just want to throw something out there for council to think about. It's to me, we do need to define a process for this. This is kind of toxic, and it will continue to be toxic until we all agree on a set protocol for this. So I do think that we need to address this and all understand what the SOP is going to be for this, because we do waste a lot of time on this, and there's a lot of unnecessary emotions that could have otherwise been stopped early on or mitigated early on. What I would like to propose is that, kind of like what we're inferring here, is that you meet one-on-one, and then the mayor, excuse me, has the authority to do whatever it is that we define. But I would like to throw another option in there too, or at least have council consider that, and that is that we find a mediator, a third-party mediator, so that when there is situations like this, we can bring somebody in that's not connected, and we give that option to the mayor. So if the mayor thinks that it's a situation that would be best served by mediation with an outside party, that he has that tool available. I just want to make sure that that is in our SOP. That if we do come up with an SOP, that they're, it's one-on-one first. It goes to the mayor. This is what I'm envisioning. Right? It goes to the mayor, and then the mayor has some options to either address it himself or herself, or call in a third-party mediator, because we don't know what every situation is going to look like. And so there might be a situation, or the mayor might even be involved to where she can't be neutral or whatever. So I think having a third party mediator established would be a good route. But the overall picture of what I'm trying to say is that we do need to come up with a defined procedure for this because this cannot continue to go on. It is the biggest problem that we have right now.
Brandon,
My recommendation, if you were a third party Oregon this group, that at PSU, they do a lot of work on that type of front, might be a good option. If we don't get there, but if we do need to be there, we're already prepared, we're being proactive. Another point, no, I got lost. Great.
League of Oregon 6 might be.
Progressive discipline, right? For HR, at least through my HR partner, we have a process in place at work that if you do this, this is how we approach it. I would love to know if that's what we use with city staff. I don't know if that's how you categorize it, but you would have a steps.
Yes.
And I think we should probably adopt some similar approach and hold ourselves accountable as we would hold the city staff. So I think that that might be something as at least a guideline for us helping escalation of this happens, your first approach, go and talk one-on-one with someone. That doesn't get you anywhere. Second approach, this individual does something like this, then bring in a mediator. You know, I mean, at least it's outlined. We're not guessing when we get there.
Okay, so as far as accountability. Mayor. Here and
If I could make an observation, the first time I came here and staffed the council, it was the meeting after you had fired your lawyers. And the agreement was I would staff for 2 months until you found 2 lawyers. And it truly was a dumpster fire. You know, of all the dumpster fires I've dealt with, this is probably number 3, if I'm being honest. And the mayor really was kind of the glue that held things together. I mean, that's as disagreeable as things got. He was the one person that I think the various factions believed they could speak to. And there was a point where it's hard for me to even articulate, but I just sensed that we had reached the boiling point. And it was, I remember Councilor Reed just screaming at me. And I was like, you know, that's as bad as it's going to get. It's going to settle down from there. And it did. So I think that, and then things started going much better. And then I got pulled out and sent to Damascus. My reward. But so I think, and then, you know, when I came back after Shelby went in-house with Tigard, I was so proud of you guys because everything was just going really well. I mean, you had a highly functional council and we're getting amazing grants and everything. I think that when you've had the experience of the mayor, of needing to be the glue guy, then if there's another situation that comes in where there's conflict between 2 or 3 counselors on issues, it's hard to expect that person to become like the quote unquote disciplinarian, because his role always has been the person that everyone could talk to. I think that we had the issue with the park. Alex called me in December 2020 and she said, I think we're going to have a problem with the park. And I laughed. I was like, oh, why would we have a problem with the park? Right. Well, it turns out she was correct. I was very wrong. And I think that things have been going so well that then when that sort of conflict, a level of anger that no one would predict over a public park came up, it kind of caught everyone off guard. And in a sense, you guys stopped making decisions and we lost a lot of momentum. And it's kind of the exact opposite of the first time that I came out here, which was that you guys had, I mean, multiple lawsuits, real problems. And there were good people it just had too much on their plate. and really just needed help. And now it's like everything had been going really well. No, I mean, I didn't see this coming at all. And so when it's a council that's used to being collaborative and used to being trusting each other, and suddenly trust, I don't know, you guys lost trust in each other. I mean, I've just watched it as people started questioning each other's intentions. And so, and part of it was public comment, and part of it was disinformation. There's subjective facts, and then there are objective facts, and that people were saying things that weren't true, or half true, or 10% true. And what do you do with that? And I think that that's the struggle, right? That you guys are going to need to figure out how respectfully or disrespectfully you're willing to be treated or to treat each other. You're going to have to decide how respectfully or disrespectfully you're going to allow your staff to be treated by members of the community that come in here. Because again, like, it was a dumpster fire, then everything got good, and then suddenly there were people, for whatever reason, decided there was a problem. They came in here and they said things to Alex, and they said things to me, and they said things to your staff. And you hadn't seen staff get treated that way. And you guys hadn't been treated that way either. And so I feel like we're at another one of these inflection points where you guys are either going to have kind of honest conversations with each other and decide, if somebody comes in and, you know, calls Alex a liar, calls me a liar, what have you, that the default is going to be not going to allow that. That we have a basic level of civility that we expect, or not. And I think that the not isn't going to be some dumpster fire. It's going to be just lost opportunities, because there's the opportunity cost. And it's like, how much of our time last year was spent on things that we weren't excited about or passionate about, or that we could point to and say, we got that done, and that was a great thing for the community. And unfortunately, like, guys, I mean, Alex and I spent so much time on the phone talking about things that weren't necessarily going to lead the community forward. And for someone that, you know, knows how bad things can be, and the mayor's right, it can be very bad, and knows how things good could be, because I saw it out here. Like, I'm incredibly proud of where Scappoose is as compared to 2010. But I think it's going to, you guys are going to need to decide amongst yourselves what you want.
Well, first of all, I don't think we want to confuse a successfully functioning council with one that agrees on everything. And I know we all agree to that, but it's easy to agree to it, but then when it actually comes up, to feel a little differently. And Brandon's point about thick skin is really important. Like the mayor, I've been around a lot of boards, and we don't have a person on this board that I can see that is that aggressive, rude personality that can't get along with anybody. And we're fortunate in that regard, but we will have disagreements, and we have to choose our words carefully. If we do something that is offensive to somebody, and we usually know it ourselves when we do. It's the way I was raised. If you do something you think maybe came across wrong, you do something inappropriate, or you said the wrong words, you apologize to them. You know, it's real simple. You know, I think all of us would accept an apology if that was the case. I don't know that, I don't see things on this council as bad as what some other people do, I guess. But it is okay to disagree. And if we can't, I know we all say that in our language, but that means somebody won't agree with you. They will have a different point of view, and there's going to be some sort of resolution made, because none of us have any authority by ourselves. We only have authority when we vote. That's the only time we have authority. So I'm just saying that, you know, I just things aren't going that badly, and I would like us to continue to move forward. We have a system for dealing with these. I like the idea of a mediation kind of thing, if it came to that. But really, the first step is with the mayor. If I mess up, the mayor will tell me, or the council president. So that's the way it's supposed to work, I think.
Yeah, kind of follow up a little bit on what Pete said and what Scott said earlier. You know, we want to be careful that we don't develop a solution in search of a problem. And so there's a fine line there. You know, do we really have a problem here or not? You know, and I'm not convinced there's a problem. I think we're just having a normal discourse, and if we don't, we can maintain some objectivity here, then I think we can all move forward in a much more progressive fashion. I did note what Peter just said. He couldn't believe that there was a issue with a park. You know, who would object to a park in a community? Oh, well, not many. It wasn't the park; it was the design of the park. That was the problem. I would argue that it was a legitimate problem. And so that was kind of the first pin to drop with this current round. And so and whether that's been resolved now or not, who knows? But and that's then it comes back to the subjectivity perspective. And Peter, I'm sure you're aware that yours is subjective as anybody else. And so if we accept that we have our own subjective perspective on things, and a park that I might think is very poorly designed, Megan might think is great design. So if we have that argument and discussion, then I think we came to a good resolution in that particular process. I know there were some hurt feelings in that process, but I think we can end up with a better product because of that. And if you don't think that, then I'm not sure we were on the same council. But I think we came up with a good solution there that everybody feels good about. But you know, it comes back to let's not create a solution for a problem that doesn't really exist.
So I kind of just wanted to follow up a little bit on, you know, what Peter had said. You know, part of it, I think we've kind of gone through a timeline in the last couple of years of a huge growth in public distrust, and it's really waned on everybody individually, the public. You know, and the issue that we have, the basis issue that we end up having is we have this growing distrust of, you know, our government and how it functions. And the problem is if we're not deterring that behavior, we just grow it within all of us and we start distrusting each other. And the biggest thing, the only way that we can move forward and move forward properly is to trust each other and to trust the process and to also trust those that we hired to put into a position. And by trusting each other is how we're going to move forward. And so I do like the idea of, you know, having if we have issues with each other, you know, we need to have that conversation with each other. We need to move forward. We can't get stuck on one thing because it costs our city time, money, and future growth because we're stuck in a position. So
I completely agree with Josh that we have to change the narrative. And piggybacking off of what Peter said, how much are we willing to accept from each other and from the public um, in terms of assumptions and hostility? There's specific situations I could get into. It's not necessarily probably very important, but I don't know if getting into specific situations would help people see maybe how it came across or what the reality felt like to other people in that space, because I think, you know, some people maybe don't recognize that what they said or what they did and the impact that it had on others in the room or to the public.
I heard
Absolutely.
Whatever's been- guys are starting to start that forward. There's some and I don't want to send circle back at the end. Coming up in this and how there that there while we switch gears, why don't we go ahead and take by giving it shift into our environmental stance. That'd be good.